so
It's
proud.
going to be late,
One is
so we're going to all speak loudly.
and he had settled in his state. To know the full
It's a
account.
good boy.
All the
Okay, we don't
legal
want
contract. Legal contract to the will.
Okay, everybody, let's sit. We're online. The non-fallacious
three precious gems,
and the truth of our pure selfless wishes, may the precious Buddhist teachings flourish and spread to the expanse of all areas throughout the length and breadth of the West. For all the people living there, together with their dear ones, who are engaged in the teachings and have faith and respect for them, may all conditions adverse to their practice of the pure Dharma be dispelled, and an excellent collection of favorable conditions increase like the waxing moon. And especially for those who work on methods to accomplish the flourishing and spreading of the victorious one's teachings, which are the source of benefit and happiness, may they never be oppressed by massive interference and adverse conditions, and may this spontaneously happen just as we have hoped and wished. The blessed ones dwelling in the world domain of the Ultra Peak Mountain, together with the great gathering of great ones and the great bodhisattvas. At that time, the blessed one entered his samadhi, which sounds the Dharma's call for profound illumination, and at the same time, Noble Avalokiteshvara, the Bodhisattva Mahasattva, looking at the profound practice of transcendent knowledge, saw the vast ideas of their mental emptiness. Then, through the inspiration of the Buddha, Venerable Shariputra said to Avalokiteshvara, how should those noble ones learn who wish to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge? And Avalokiteshvara answered, Venerable Shariputra, whoever wishes to follow the profound practice of transcendent knowledge should look at it like this. Seeing the five skandhas and their natural entities. Form is empty, emptiness itself is form, emptiness is not separate from form, form is not separate from emptiness. In the same way, feeling, discriminating awareness, composition of factors, and consciousness are empty. Thus, all the dharmas are empty and have no characteristics. They are unborn and ceasing. They are not pure or pure. They neither decrease nor increase. Therefore, since there is emptiness, there is no form, no feeling, no discriminating awareness, no composition of factors, no consciousness, no eye, no ear, no nose, no tongue, no body, no mind, no appearance, no sound, no smell, no taste, no sensation, no objects of mind, no quality of sight, no quality of hearing, no quality of smelling, no quality of tasting, no quality of sensing, no quality of thought, no quality of mind consciousness. There are no nidanas from ignorance to old age and death, nor literary health. There is no suffering, no cause of suffering, no ending of suffering, and no path, no wisdom, no attainment, no non-attainment. Therefore, since there is no attainment, the bodhisattvas abide by means of transcendent knowledge. And since there is no obscurity of mind, they have no fear. They transcend falsity and pass beyond the bounds of sorrow. All the Buddhas who dwell in the past, present, and future, by means of transcendent knowledge, fully and clearly awakened to unsurpassed, true, complete enlightenment. Therefore, the mantra of transcendent knowledge, the mantra of deep insight, the unsurpassed mantra, the unequal mantra, the mantra which calms all suffering should be known as truth, for there is no perception. In transcendent knowledge, the mantra is proclaimed, Parayata Om Rade Rade Parvate Parasamvate Vasiddhisa. O Shariputra, this is how a Bodhisattva Mahasattva learn profound transcendent knowledge. Then the blessed one arose from our samadhi and raised the Bodhisattva practice just as you have taught, and the Tathagata of the universe. And the blessed one that said this, RINPOCHE and Avalokiteshvara, that whole gathering in the world with its gods, humans, asuras, and gandharvas, their hearts full of joy, praise the words of the blessed one.
Generating bodhicitta.
With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind and for awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then I too remain, to dispel the mysteries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind and for full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the mysteries of the world. With the wish to free all beings, I shall always go for refuge to the Buddha, Dharma, and Sangha until I reach full enlightenment. Inspired by wisdom and compassion, today in the Buddha's presence, I generate the mind and for full awakening for the benefit of all sentient beings. As long as space endures, as long as sentient beings remain, until then may I too remain, to dispel the mysteries of the world.
Should we do the three jewels first?
To recite Om Mani Padme. So get your, you can do a couple of ways around. He's on the path right now, so it should be here. So everyone just at your own pace, just recite a mile or two of Om Mani Padme. my apologies
On behalf of New Jersey Transit. How are you? Thank you. So, I'm happy to say that I decided to go to the station early and take the earlier train. And I'm very calm and happy. Train arrived a little bit late. Took us all to Newark Broad Street and said, okay, now everyone off. And they canceled that train. And then another train came, and it went right through. And then a third train came to Hoboken. But I better take that. And I asked the conductor, how soon is the one coming after this? He said, that's a little bit late. Better take this. So, my apologies. You recited all these prayers? Happy birthday.
Thank you. Entered a new decade.
It's
It's different. In a good way.
I don't know. Okay. So, pencil. We had reached the thing is that we jump back and forth. Ethics, the ethic of altruism on page 111. And we're just completing that. And I felt that we should discuss, there are these two rather important points that His Holiness makes here.
What page is it?
111.
111, 112. So 111, the ethic of altruism. Altruism is a genuinely selfish dedication of one's actions and words to the benefit of others. So this is, there are these other aspects of altruism that we've been discussing. And here, of ethics. Altruism is when you devote yourself totally to others. And so cultivating something like the ethics of altruism is not something that we can do through sort of brute force of our emotions. It's something that we have to cultivate. And we have to cultivate a feeling of responsibility towards others. And the idea that we can... You think that I'm worth recording? The idea that one can do that is something that we discussed earlier. The idea that the mind can actually change from the quite natural tendency of self-cherishing towards a concern for others. The first thing that His Holiness wishes us to do is establish that that is even possible. And then come the techniques by which we do that. So, altruism is genuinely selfless dedication of one's actions and words to the benefit of others. So when we talk about ethics, ethics is not merely refraining from hurting others. Ethics is not merely working towards a virtuous and noble way of life. It has to go further. It has to actually be engaged in helping others. All the world's religious traditions recognize this as the highest form of ethical practice. And in many, it is seen as the main avenue to liberation or to unity with God. So we've discussed this, and we were talking about the actions that we can engage in, physical actions of helping others, and then the actual thoughts that we can engage in, delighting in the virtues of others and refraining from engaging in negative activity. But the delight in the virtues of others is a way of, as Tony said, of cultivating virtue without any physical effort whatsoever. You can lay back and enjoy. An important part of serving others is using discernment to assess the likely consequences of our actions. This is the second paragraph on page 112. This is important because we've been discussing the fact that there are two aspects to engaging in ethical behavior. There is the cultivation of a good motivation, particularly compassion. In other words, engaging in life with a wish to remove the suffering of others. And then there is the discernment that is necessary to actually implement that attitude of wishing to remove the suffering of others. And this discernment is it's the technique, it's the actual way we implement that attitude of compassion. But the discernment is a quality of wisdom. It's a quality that knows how to, or determines what best way to engage. By being heedful, mindful, and attentive in our everyday lives, we will begin to gain mastery over our actions and words. So the way of actually applying this ethic, wish to be of benefit to others, is by means of the heedfulness, mindfulness, and attentiveness that we've been discussing. Where you are watching over yourself, you are maintaining an awareness of the techniques necessary to have that mindfulness, and then you are maintaining an awareness over your actions, So now we dealing with destructive emotions. His Holiness begins, as I've suggested, the key to human happiness lies in our own state of mind. So too do the primary obstacles to that happiness. Okay, what do you think of that? The key to human happiness lies in our own state of mind. So too do the primary obstacles to that happiness. I think that most of us lead our lives believing that the key to our happiness lies in stuff outside of ourselves, and the obstacles also are very much on the outside. So what are your thoughts on this idea that actually the key to our happiness lies inside ourselves, and the primary obstacles to that happiness are also inside ourselves?
Definitely true.
One vote for.
Yes, and in Shakespeare, I think it's Hamlet says, there is no good or bad, but thinking makes it so. So all the wanting this or this is a problem is generated internally. The rain is the rain, the cold is the cold, the heat is the heat, and we react or make a story about it. So.
But, I mean, it's quite understandable that we might think that the rain, the cold are the causes of our unhappiness, and that a nice warm house.
I think it's a change in your mental attitude, because we're pretty much raised to be external and think everything's happening to us, and it makes it's a big switch when you realize that you're responsible for things. Initially it didn't feel natural for me because I was used to blaming everyone else. And then I realized that that was not very helpful. And it was quite a reckoning when I found that there was some power in being able to recognize that the problems that I was having was brought on by myself. Hard to take, but it works.
Well, as I sat on the train, I put the blame on New Jersey Transit. And what alleviated the pain was getting closer. I did think of Shanti Deva's, if you can do something about it, don't worry. So without a doubt, the greatest impediments to our individual well-being and our ability to live a spiritual life, spiritually fulfilling life, are our own persistent propensities towards destructive or afflictive emotions. So, I find, I've said this before here, but I must say that as we go through these very peculiar political challenges at the moment, I think it's really important to remember this. I permit myself, this is not a discussion on politics. This is a discussion on how we handle the situations out there that we really blame others for. And I think that to really consider that without a doubt the greatest impediment to our individual well-being and our ability to live a spiritually fulfilling life are our own persistent propensities towards destructive or afflictive emotions. Such emotions are the real enemies of human happiness and the ultimate source of all destructive human behavior. Tackling these negative emotions is an important goal of ethical and spiritual practice. I think it's more than simply an important goal of ethical and spiritual practice. I think it is the essence of spiritual practice. What do you think?
Can you repeat it? The essence of spiritual practice.
Tackling these negative emotions is the essence of spiritual practice. I think many of you know there was one meditator sat in his cave, and all he did was watch his mind. And every time he had a negative thought, he would put a black mark on the cave wall, and the cave walls were very dark. And eventually, as he caught himself and was able to control his mind, They were more and more white marks until finally the whole cave was white. What's really important about that little story is that that is a spiritual life well lived. Simply sitting in a cave and watching over one's mind and holding it from the negative and pushing it towards the positive. No objection.
Good thing you didn't run out of chalk.
Sorry?
Good thing you didn't run out of chalk.
Eventually, he probably didn't need chalk. It was all.
How would that, staying in the cave, how would that relate to attitudes?
So, if we consider that the most constructive, beneficial thing we can do is to work on ourselves, if we really tame our minds, I think that on some level, and it's not a level that we can point out physically and say that's the sort of dynamic of it, we are contributing towards a better world. I hope. I hope it works. I don't know that we can do much more. I mean, yes, there are things that we can do, but ultimately I think that's the greatest contribution that we might make. But what are your thoughts? Yes, sir.
It's also good to take that mind outside and do something with your body about things too, when you have the opportunity.
You mean stretch?
No, I mean, go to a demonstration, write a letter. Instead of sitting around in despair, it's very helpful to change the mind, to take action,
So,
if it's available.
if it's available, and if it's available in a positive, skillful way, without anger, without sort of negativity, but if we are engaging in such action with sort of an afflictive mind, I think we probably contribute in a...
I agree.
It's so nice to meet you and to be here. I went to your monastery. I didn't actually go in, but I was there in Yunga, and so now here you are. So thank you. I'm lucky to be here on the day you're teaching. And it just was reminding me of a talk that I just heard with Minga Rinpoche and Richard Davidson and Cortland Dahl, where they were talking about this sort of shift to also cultivating the positive. So not just moving the negative to the positive, but actually cultivating, compassion as being something that we can cultivate, and virtue being things that we can cultivate. So, and that His Holiness had said some time back, hey, why don't you look at it this way? Like, you've been studying anger and desire and all these things. And so the conversation was just a shift kind of in that direction in terms of cultivating virtue. Not necessarily like focusing on the disturbing emotions. I mean, of course, yes, but
Cultivating virtue as opposed to...
trying to eliminate anger and desire and greed
And do you feel there's a line between the two, or are they sort of...
Well, apparently there's not, yeah. But it's a shift in perspective in terms of where we're living.
And what's the shift in perspective?
Well, for me, it would be kind of a less focus on anger and attachment and more focus on love and compassion and what I can do, my action. Good question.
So this whole process, it's an inner process, and it's one that we do before we are ready to go out and manifest. What's the word? Demonstrate. You, on your pillow, work towards really recognizing the negative aspects of afflictive behavior and the positive aspects of the other, and really work towards, more you recognize that, more the muscle of restraint develops. That muscle of restraint and that concern for others, we really have to work at in a calm environment in order for our instincts to be virtuous, generous, as opposed to being selfish.
Definitely a calm environment is key. Precious. But we can create it as well, but it takes effort to create, that space, at least in my experience.
We can't create that space at the moment that we are being provoked. We can't expect ourselves to have that instinctual, you say instinctual or instinctive? Reaction unless we have exercised it. So that's really important. And the what is it? This devotion to altruism, this developing this selfless dedication to one's actions and words to benefit others. That's something that we have to work on the two aspects. We have to work at the recognition of the benefits of that, the happiness that we derive from that, as well as, of course, the happiness that we provide others, and the negative aspects of self-grasping and selfish stinginess that prevents us from.
I was thinking that whenever I read His Holiness or listen to him, he is so clear and so simple that it feels very obvious and then yet difficult to actually implement. And so when I woke up on my birthday, I felt extremely happy that I had made 70 years old. And I thought, I am going to, from now on until the end of my life, try to be a kind person. It's one thing I know I can work on. It's a muscle too, instead of being, to have the tendency to be negative, as it seems to be the habit of many people. And it's quite rewarding when it's difficult to try and work on that muscle.
It's rewarding when it's difficult.
Yes.
And we derive happiness from engaging in it.
Yes, yeah. And I think that was the other thing, is really trying to understand what happiness actually means. When you see that word, there's a lot of misunderstanding.
So again, happy birthday.
Thank you.
Madame.
No, I was just wondering, si quelqu'un vous attaque,
No,
if somebody, what did you say, you gave the example of somebody provoking it, okay? Let's say Cindy provokes me. There's two possibilities. I can either feel Jacob's being provoked by her, or I could feel, oh, Cindy, what's the matter? Oh, Cindy, what's the matter? Poor thing. My thought could either be, or it could be worrying about the other person. And then it would be positive, wouldn't it? So I wouldn't be angry or unhappy. Because you were talking about the discernment before.
Mm-hmm.
You need the discernment to
The
help
discernment to determine how
others, to help others.
put into effect our compassionate
Exactly.
attitude.
So you first need to recognize the emotion in yourself. Then you can maybe recognize it better than others. Once you've dealt with it yourself, possibly be useful. But you first need to recognize it, don't you? And when you see it in another, think, oh, poor thing, rather than, oh, poor me.
This is what many in the West refer to as compassion towards yourself. Is that?
Oh, when you first identify.
I object to that. I just want
Yeah, yeah.
to clearly state compassion is something that we have towards others.
No, you need to identify your faults, that's for sure.
I think His Holiness just had an op-ed piece in the Washington Post.
Yes.
Compassion for yourself.
Yes, but whoever wrote that
Yeah, I was
probably
gonna
was.
say.
But I haven't read it. It's often with.
What did it say?
I don't know. I haven't read it.
I
Jane.
wasn't able to read it, but I saw that it was there, and I saw the headline of it, which seemed to be about self-care as a way to serve others.
So I think that we do have to care for ourselves. We don't refer to that as compassion. We refer to that as working on yourself, caring for yourself. But compassion is that wish to remove the suffering of others. It's towards others. In the same way that love is a wish to provide for others. Of course, we talk about self-love, but when we talk about these qualities in the Buddhist tradition, they are towards others. The wish to remove our own suffering and the wish to provide ourselves with happiness, those are what lead us towards a wish for freedom from cyclic existence. A wish to remove the suffering of others, compassion, a wish to provide them with their needs, love, becomes the basis for our working towards the attainment of full enlightenment, so in order to most effectively benefit others. So the sort of fork in the road. We need the determined or some aspects of this wish to remove our own suffering, but our main motivation should be to benefit all others and to remove their suffering. But we should all read this article, this op-ed piece. The person who, sorry?
I think it's from God's new book, right, about the voice for the voiceless, about the Tibetan cause.
Don't know.
It
Don't
just
know.
came out today.
Today? Yeah?
This article is in every book.
So do we make a distinction between self and other?
I think it's important to make a distinction between self and other. What should motivate us, one of the things that we have to contemplate, as His Holiness often says, is you think of me, I'm one person, and then you think of infinite others. Who should I work for? The one or the infinite others? That's something we have, it's very helpful to think of this tiny little single entity and the infinite.
Why does one exclude the other?
We are part of all sentient beings. That is true. But if our intention is to benefit ourselves rather than, or at the expense of, all the others, then we are really working towards sort of tightening our self-grasping, which is going to cause us suffering. The way in which the two overlap is if we can recognize that the best way to benefit ourselves is to benefit, then you're doing both. But you should not engage in benefiting all others thinking, oh, this is how to benefit. It's a very tricky. We have to. The motivation should be for others. I mean, it's Holiness often says the most effective way to help yourself is to benefit others. But if, yeah.
Why selfish?
Well, I would think my idea about this, compassion for the self and why I think it's objectionable is that I think it's necessary that our terms be clear. And to say compassion for the self is to introduce it, you could get a completely wrong notion of what compassion is from that. And you could say it's just semantical. No,
So can you expand on what the completely wrong notion would be?
the completely false notion. Well, that you could convince yourself that acting in your own self-interest was a form of compassion, for the self. When in fact, it's, I think, diluting, in fact, distorting the meaning of, compassion. And that in many cases, I see it very often in terms of contemporary political discussion, is that you just use a word that seems good, but you apply it to something that it totally isn't. And it's a kind of an obfuscation, that keeps us from seeing things that are true.
Many people say, like, if you don't love yourself, how do you love the other? And if you don't know how to love yourself, how to care yourself, how do you care about the other people? Just like, for example, you don't eat, you don't sleep, you don't rest for yourself, and then I'm trying to help other people, give all my effort or whatever to help other people, but you neglect your own health, your own body, and then you will collapse. Then that's another is not a perfect way of helping or love people, love yourself. So that means we have to stay in the middle, right?
We have to take care of ourselves, but our priority should not be to please ourselves. Our priority should be to serve the infinite others. What's more, if we are caring for ourselves simply to make ourselves happy, as opposed to caring for ourselves in order to better help humanity or help others, other sentient beings, one remains a sort of selfish, limiting action, while the other hopefully brings us more happiness, more in return. We do have to care for ourselves. And, Shantideva even says there are times when we should take it easy, we should relax in order to regain our strengths.
I think that love yourself, the wording doesn't sound correct. For me, the understanding what the affliction that you spoke about first, understanding that the happiness and pain comes from our mind, and that understanding of the suffering, the happiness, it comes from our mind, and then all the sentient beings just like me, they're suffering too. And so that understanding the suffering of myself, that will go to, oh, they're just like me, they are suffering just like me, and that turns into compassion and then renunciation and all that stuff. And then I feel like self-compassion also wording feels, it's self-compassion. When I hear self-compassion, I feel like, oh, poor me, I'm gonna give myself, because I'm so tired, I'm gonna give myself massage. That feels like a self-compassion feeling. That's like this word. Instead of self-compassion, I think in the Dharma context, there's no self-compassion, but is understanding the eyes inflated from self-grasping. Then that's how affliction arises, and that's how everybody else is just like me. And that's translated to compassion.
But I think that your point is important.
Yeah,
we do have to take care of ourselves. That's important. However, what you both said is we do have to maintain the line that what we are working at is diminishing self-cherishing and working towards concern for others.
Sometimes I look up the definition of the words to help understand them better, especially when it's coming from Tibetan into English, because the Tibetan often tells you how you're supposed to be practicing, and like in Ning, Ning is the heart, and J is like a lordly heart, to train your heart that way. And compassion in English is calmness together with someone, and passion for emotions. And I think sometimes we take for granted the meanings of words, so we end up developing even a misunderstanding. Because I don't think you would actually use, as you said, self-compassion, because calmness with something else, someone else.
I was wondering, so our inner understanding of, as she said, like the darkness within and the lightness, it has a certain limit. Does that create a threshold for your ability to have this like transcendental compassion? Like I try to access it through meditation or imagination, like really push it through, but I do feel like there is certain limitation to things just because me as a person, I understand it through my own experience and my understanding of things. So yeah, do you think there is a limit just because it's happening?
So if you're talking about a limit, when we sit and meditate and we are working at diminishing our self-cherishing and we are developing our concern for others, if we think about to really develop compassion, you have to begin by recognizing your own suffering. And there are different levels of suffering. And you see the way in which you are the victim of suffering. That's real, that's true. The first thing that the Buddha taught was the truth of suffering. Then we recognize the dependence, our dependence on others. All sentient beings, beings of different type, we depend on for everything we have. And we recognize that they're suffering in the same way we are. We've already established our suffering. And we see that these people were dependent on our suffering. And then our hearts go out. Our hearts go out. Our wish to remove their suffering gets stronger and stronger. I don't think there's a limit. The more our hearts go out to them, the more we determine to work towards being able to alleviate their suffering, to help them. And that's where we recognize that the most beneficial way that we can do so is to work on ourselves. So I think that the potential for sort of this thought evolving is pretty much endless. Yes, theoretically, upon attaining Buddhahood, it becomes natural. And one of the qualities of a Buddha is that he or she acts to help others without any effort. It's an effortless, but until then,
Yeah, that was what I was wondering about, like, the higher things, like whether I'm able to understand that and kind of like create something that pressures down my ability to be truly like compassionate. Yeah, it's like, I do feel like there is no level towards the highest.
there's what?
No level to the highest thing. Like, there's no measurement to the most considerable, I guess.
We have to work.
How would, it seems to me the practice of wisdom or the meditation on emptiness would be integral to what she's talking about.
We have to develop all qualities. We have to infuse each of our actions of benefiting others and refraining from negativity with an awareness of our lack of self. And the whole thing, I think, brews.
A lack of self distinct from others.
When you're engaging in these actions of perfections, once you've generated bodhicitta, you engage in them with an awareness of your emptiness, the emptiness of the action, its the dependent origination of whatever the actions are. That has to be part of the engagement in your virtuous behavior, in your actions as a bodhisattva, in order for these to lead to Buddhahood.
I
So-
would think that if you're meditating on self and other, and you're looking for inherent self and inherent other, and then you don't find them, there's an equanimity that comes. And then that,
I don't know. I haven't gotten there yet. But
That's pretty high up.
yeah, tell us about your.
to me, if the categories of self and others are very solid, down the line, that's going to cause problems.
Well, the more we cling to a sense of self, I think that the real problem is not attributing a quality of inherent existence to others. It's the way we apply it to ourselves. That's what provokes all our selfish behavior.
So if we don't consider there's an inherent self, but we consider there's an inherent
No, I didn't say that. He's debating. Makyap. There is no pervasion.
I mean, to me, this is what might be a healthy way of talking about self-compassion. That when we investigate the nature of self and other, we don't find it, and therefore we're all equal in having Buddha nature.
Yeah, sure, absolutely.
Means my Buddha nature is just as worthy of development as everyone else's.
Yeah, but the one you have to really work at is yours. As for we wouldn't call it Buddha nature, but the emptiness of inherent existence of the phenomena that attract us, that's helpful too. Cameras, for example. Yes. You, yeah. You put your hand up? Yeah.
Well, we were talking earlier about terminology and talking about the word compassion, and we've been talking about self-compassion, and I guess whether it exists or not, or whether it's actually maybe more talking about caring for ourselves so that we can help others. But I was wondering if you could comment on the difference between pity and compassion. There's been a lot of talk about empathy and compassion, and it's almost like, like a musun, that like there's a big compassion and empathy is a part of it. And then I know maybe RINPOCHE recently said, kind of made a delineation saying compassion included the action. But anyways, that whole idea of pity, because I think it's sort of part of our culture. But the difference between that or the similarities between pity and compassion.
Well, they're different, but I think that we can use pity as a step towards compassion, because pity is recognizing someone's suffering, and compassion is really going beyond that to developing the wish to remove the suffering that you are pitying.
Doesn't pity kind of imply sort of a bit of looking down upon, as like poor them?
I think it depends. I don't think
it depends, yeah.
we can't
But
attribute.
in terms of the terminology, because I kind of investigated the two words and just like the connotation of pity versus compassion, but I can see where it is a stair step, definitely even for myself. If I find myself, I have to really look at my pride though. I really have to see where that's kind of coming into play when, looking at different people that I might consider lesser than myself, but not really realizing that's what I'm doing. Homeless, for example. The homeless.
31st Street is a very useful street to walk down for developing, going from that initial pity to really feeling some kind of feeling of wishing to alleviate the suffering they're experiencing. 31st Street is where St. Francis Church is, right? It's a block up, and
That statue is amazing.
yes.
I would debate with it. I don't. First, I think we have to understand what kind of situation we're in. Without that, I don't think we can achieve understanding of the emptiness. Thinking of just we are talking about understanding the suffering, truth of suffering. Like Lama talked about the three principles of the path. It starts with renunciation and bodhicitta and wisdom. He never said just skip to wisdom. There's always a path, a gradual path. So I think just not understanding why we are suffering or our situation is, and understanding how this suffering comes about, the dependent origination that you mentioned. Without that, and this where we are at, we can. I don't think we can skip and go to just me and others and that inherent empty inherent existence right away. Like there's a path to understand the steps. It's my debate fact.
So I would agree with the graded path, definitely. But I think the initial identification is that the ignorance is our root cause of suffering. So if we think that our cause of suffering is poverty, then that's going to be a conventional understanding, which will only get us so far. So in some way, if we don't start with some recognition of that ignorance and wisdom,
Well, but to understand the self-grasping understanding, so we start with this daily life, that His Holiness' book says, I'm angry. That my mind is, anger comes to my mind because the I is inflated. And affliction arise from self-grasping ignorance, that because I is inflated. So then you start understanding that, come to the bottom of that. But then from that, this inflating that comes from ignorance, and then there's me and others, the differentiating of me and others. So all that from the daily life, just like the book says, the understanding happiness and pain comes from my mind, and that comes from the self-grasping ignorance. So I think there's a kind of order to understand.
How would you translate the Tibetan word that underlies renunciation? Because renunciation to me has such a Christian connotation of giving up, you know, whereas the original word.
It's giving up diminishing the preoccupation with there are two levels of renunciation. Giving up our preoccupation with the affairs of this life, and giving up our preoccupation with the affairs of cyclic existence. Those are the two levels of renunciation. One is that of a being of mediums, of lower scope, and the other of medium scope.
But the word in Tibetan, what does it mean?
Is it definite emergence?
Yeah.
Nyabajumwa, yes. We have our...
What is definite emergency?
You're emerging from your preoccupation of
the
being
affairs of-
in cyclic existence. You don't want that anymore, so you're definitely going to come out of it. So you renounce the life that is making you miserable.
What made you want to emerge? Me, like realizing the reality.
Well, as I said, the first thing that the Buddha taught was the truth of suffering. We have to...
Right? Wouldn't that be?
Actually, there's something I was reading in here today that
Many causes and conditions.
Just you realize the nature of reality.
it's here that His Holiness is saying renunciation is a genuine desire to seek freedom from the bondage of suffering.
And the,
But why? Because you've understood how
Yes,
suffering works.
because it's actually from one of the patience chapters of Shantideva. Without suffering, there's no renunciation. Therefore, mind, we should stand firm.
And be grateful to those who make you suffer. Great.
but there are these two levels of renunciation.
No, definitely. Small and big.
So, we have reached past 8 o'clock. So do we have names of people we're meant to pray for, Darren?
Yes. Leon and Jan. Jan, sorry.
Say it.
Cow.
Okay.
Earl Stanley Gio.
Earl Stan
Stanley Gio Pinto.
Gio Printo.
Gio Pinto.
And Admiral Fugori, there's South African flavor.
So, the Sutra for the Recollection of the Noble Three Jewels. I prostrate to the Omniscient One. Thus the Bhagavad Tathagata Ahat Samyak Charioteer and Tamer of Beings, the Unsurpassable One, the Teacher of Devas and Humans, is the Buddha Bhagavad. The Tathagata is in accord with ordinary merit. He does not waste the roots of virtue. He is completely ornamented with all patience. He is the basis of the treasuries of merit. He is adorned with the minor marks. He blossoms with the flowers of the major months. His activity is timely and appropriate. Seeing him is without disharmony. He brings true joy to those along with faith. His knowledge cannot be overpowered. His strength cannot be challenged. He is the teacher of all sentient beings. He is the father of bodhisattvas. He is the king of noble ones. He is the guide of those who journey to the city of Nirvana. He possesses immeasurable wisdom. He possesses inconceivable confidence. His speech is completely pure. His melody is pleasing. One never has enough of seeing him. His form is incomparable. He is not stained by the realm of desire. He is not stained by the realm of form. He is not affected by the formless realm. He is completely liberated from suffering. He is completely and utterly liberated from the skandhas. He is not possessed with dhatus. His ayatanas are controlled. He is completely cut the knots. He is completely liberated from the He is liberated from craving. He is crossed over the river. He is perfected in all the wisdoms. He abides in the wisdom of the Buddha Bhagavats, who arrive in the past, present, and future. He does not abide in Nirvana. He abides in the ultimate perfection. He dwells on the bhumi where he sees all sentient beings, all beings in the perfect virtues of the greatness of the Buddha Bhagavata. The Holy Dharma is good at the beginning, good in the middle, and good at the end. Its meaning is excellent. Its words are excellent. It is uncorrupted. It is completely perfect and completely pure. It completely purifies. The Bhagavat teaches the Dharma well. It brings complete vision. It is free from sickness. It is always timely. It directs one further. Seeing it fulfills one's purpose. It brings discriminating insight for the wise. The Dharma, which is taught by the Bhagavad, is revealed properly in the Vinaya. It is renunciation. It causes one to arrive at perfect enlightenment. It is without contradiction. It is pithy. It is trustworthy and puts an end to the journey. As for the Sangha of the great Yama, they enter completely, they enter insightfully, they enter straightforwardly, they enter harmoniously, they are worthy of veneration with joined palms, they are worthy of receiving prostration, they are a field of glorious merit, they are completely capable of receiving all gifts, they are an object of generosity, they are a great object of complete generosity. The protector who possesses great kindness, the omniscient teacher, the basis of oceans of merit and virtue, are prostrate to the Tathagata. Pure, the cause of freedom from passion, virtuous, liberating from the lower realms. This alone is the supreme ultimate truth. I prostrate to the Dharma, which is peace. Having been liberated, they show the path to liberation. They are fully dedicated to the disciplines. They are a holy field of merit and possess virtue. I prostrate to the Sangha. I prostrate to the Buddha the leader. I prostrate to the Dharma the protector. I prostrate to the Sangha the community. I prostrate respectfully and always to these three. The Buddha's virtues are inconceivable. The Dharma's virtues are inconceivable. The Sangha's virtues are inconceivable. Having faith in these inconceivables, therefore the fruitions are inconceivable. May they be born in a completely pure realm. We'll read the 8 verses on training the mind. With the determination to accomplish the highest welfare of all sentient beings who surpass even a wish-granting jewel, I will learn to hold them supremely dear. Whenever I associate with others, I will learn to think of myself as the lowest amongst all, and respectfully hold others to be supreme energies of my heart. In all actions I will learn to search into my mind, and as soon as a disturbing emotion arises, endangering myself and others, I will firmly face and avert it. I will learn to cherish ill-natured beings and those oppressed by strong misdeeds and sufferings, as if I had found a precious treasure difficult to find. When others, out of jealousy, treat me badly, with abuse, slander, and so on, I will learn to take all loss and offer the victory to them. And the one whom I have benefited with great hope unreasonably hurts me very badly, I will learn to view that person as an excellent spiritual guide. In short, I will learn to offer to everyone without exception all help and happiness directly and indirectly, and respectfully take upon myself all harm and suffering of my life. I will learn to keep all these practices undefiled by the stains of the 8 worldly concerns, and by understanding all phenomena like illusions, be released from the bondage of attachment. And the prayer for a swift return of Dr. RINPOCHE. Exalted wisdom of all victories gathered in a drop, sole refuge manifest in the form of the one who burns after grows. Guru Santu Long Chant. Please bear witness here today that our prayers may be fulfilled. We beseech the great torch of doctrine, accomplishing from long ago the vast ways of aspirational prayers. Lord of speech to the victorious on his teachings, spreading them to the ends of the earth by means of explanation and practice. Though holding the commitment, I will invite all beings to be my guests in unsurpassed great awakening. Yet you have grown the activities of the form body that serves the welfare of others. Is that worthy of the supreme among beings, the Bodhisattvas? Though impossible for you until existence end to abandon your commitment to liberate all beings, we beseech the new son of Nirmanakaya to swiftly return from the realm of Dharmakaya, brought forth by Bodhicitta and grown by 7 steeds. Having reached the far limits of scholarship, religious life, and goodness, please come swiftly as an unrivaled supreme emanation, full holder of the sage's teachings and the wish-fulfilling jewel. Return as the glory of the Samkhya, manifest truth of the three precious jewels, Mahakaya, Karmayana, and Srimati Devi, and the ocean of Dharma protectors. May you spontaneously fulfill our wish, the swift blossom of the reincarnation. Thank you.